Kia ora and welcome to Uncovering Authenticity. I'm Monique Bradley. It's a delight to have you here. Now, if this is your first time listening or watching this podcast, it's all about real stories, chatting to real people, doing really cool things. And today I am absolutely delighted to have a business owner and entrepreneur who absolutely fascinates me in the studio. Her name is Elina Lechtchinski. Yay! How was that for a big opening?
That was phenomenal.
Okay.
That was
phenomenal.
Okay.
It was all right. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to manifest having a big stage where I've got a stadium arena around me and I'm doing that level of sort of podcast, but it's live with, 150,000 people around me. So that's what I'm manifesting. So just to give you that vision, because you didn't know that before, did you?
No. And I'm kind of glad I didn't. Otherwise, I'd be hyperventilating.
There you go. All I can tell you is you're in a safe space here, so no need to panic. Now, you are fascinating to me. You are super interesting. You run a business called ProjectSeven, which we're gonna talk about today. And before we dive into the whole backstory and everything that we'll cover, you are in the business of running a team of incredible virtual assistants, and they're all here in New Zealand. Is that right?
Yes.
Amazing. So they have local knowledge, local language, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. How many have you got in your team?
We've got 5 locally, and we've got 1 offshore.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. And first of all, I can't imagine being like running a business like that. It's so different from the business that I run because my business is me. And that's cool. I've tried to run teams and everything like that. It is not my area of expertise. What is it like being responsible for all those people? Like, what's your thinking dynamic around that? How do you manage the logistics? It's a good question, right?
Honestly, the caliber of staff that I have, the absolute brilliant team, they manage me.
Thank you. That's fantastic.
They spend a great deal of time sighing heavily and saying, Elina, we need this from you. We know you're networking. We know you're going around talking to the clients, but we need you at this date, at this time to go through this stuff. I'm very lucky with the team I have.
I love that. Now, how did you get into running your own business, particularly in this niche? What's the story?
I've grown up with entrepreneurs all around me. My mum and my dad both run their own businesses, and I was their administrative support growing up.
And you were doing that when you were quite young, right?
Yes, as early as 10, I'd say.
Stop it.
Well, in some cultures, you have children to be slaves.
Okay. Are we allowed to say that in the podcast? No, we can. It's my podcast. I'll do what I like. Perfect. Wow. Yeah. Wow. So what was that experience like for you working from a young age in a family-based business?
In truth, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed helping the family. I enjoyed providing the solutions, which was always the problem-solving fix that they needed. And it allowed me to be very, very close to my family. It had its stresses. I don't think a 10-year-old should be writing letters to lawyers. But I wouldn't have changed it for the world, truly. It allowed me to get very close with my family. We'd spend late nights talking about all these like client work, marketing work, bookkeeping. And they were going through a lot of stress, as any family or any entrepreneur who's first starting out, and I could be there to support them. It was some of my fondest memories as a kid.
So when most kids are out hanging out with friends, going to the movies or, going to sport or the arts, which is what I did. I certainly was not a sporty kid, but I was playing the flute and I was going to singing lessons and tap dancing and all these sorts of things, doing theatre and stuff. And you were working.
I still got to do those things too. I just got better at time management. I don't know now. I couldn't tell you. We were always just deadline based. If something needed to happen, I'd help. And I don't know. I still managed to have. I went to tennis and I did dance classes and I tried to learn the piano, but that was too painful for everyone's ears. I still managed to have quite a good childhood. And I had some friends and lots of movies and yeah, I loved movies. I still love movies.
Yeah, so good. Now, I can hear a lilt in your accent, and since I've known you for a little while now, and I know you've told me a little bit of your heritage, but I still can't quite pinpoint the accent. What are the influences in your accent? Where have you actually come from?
I did say I love movies. It was too much television growing up.
Oh.
Absolutely. My family is originally from Eastern Europe, and my accent's the furthest from an Eastern European one.
There's a lot of American influence in there.
Yeah, what was America? Hollywood. What could I tell you? I actually don't have a reason or an understanding of why my accent's half Canadian, half American.
Yeah.
Except to say that I think most of my formative years, especially when I was in preschool learning the English language, was from the Wiggles.
Oh, wow.
and some other American Dora the Explorer type shows. So I think that's where most of it comes from. But
wow.
It's just a guess.
So Eastern European, and you grew up here in New Zealand?
Yeah, we came here when I was 1.
And so and of course, if you're in the home environment and your family have different accents as well, often there's influences from the different accents around you, as an example, and that can manifest in lots of different ways, I've learned over the years. What was it like then? I can assume there'd be cultural differences of growing up in a European, the family you've grown up with, compared to traditional Kiwi life. What was that like for you?
I'm not sure. I think it was a little difficult at the beginning because I sort of probably fell through the cracks. As well as being Russian, I'm also Jewish. And wow. I sort of landed myself in a position where I wasn't Kiwi enough to be Kiwi, or Russian enough to be Russian, or Jewish enough to be Jewish in the communities here. So very early on, I sort of decided to just be myself and to hell with everyone else. And it was a bit lonely in the beginning, but at the end of it, I think people get attracted to people who want to just be themselves and not deal with muss and fuss and other sorts of things. Yeah, I don't know. I think it can be a bit isolating when you don't have the network or the community from the get-go, because usually your parents are the ones who have it and then the kids just sort of absorb that.
Yes.
And I know definitely my brother had it easier than I did because we have a 10-year gap. But, I think it just made me a little more responsive to environment. And just...
Do you think through that isolation, did it make you a little bit more resilient maybe, or a little more self-reliant?
I guess a little bit more self-reliant, but I am still...
You are deeply independent as a human. I know that. I do know that about you. Absolutely you are.
Maybe. I'm still very reliant on my family. I think because of the culture that I'm from and all the cultures combined, we're quite close. And so families sort of stick together in tough times and good times and feed each other, drive each other around. It's not even discussed. It's just what you do. Mm-hmm. And I might be independent, but I think it's because very early on my family gave me the confidence to do that.
Oh, that's
like I always knew that if I went and started a business and everything imploded, I'd always have a couch to crash on,
Yeah. And I think that's so important for someone with an entrepreneurial mindset as well, is knowing that, I often, if I facilitate a training every so often, one of the questions I might ask, depending on the type of training, is, if money was no object and you could take a leap, what would you actually do? And the responses are quite amazing. I even ask this in BNI when we have people up and speaking, and we're both members of different BNI groups, and it's one of the other ways we've connected through lots of different groups actually. And as the person in charge of education at the moment in our group, I introduce people, I ask them if the same thing, if money was no object, what would you do? And often, they're kind of crazy things, but people often don't take that risk or go on that journey because of that fear of not having what you term almost as a safety net, to know that if things go belly up, I've got a couch to crash on. Do you think something like that, like the fact that knowing that, has that not inflamed, it's the wrong word, has it kind of helped you activate your entrepreneurial journey maybe because of that, knowing, right, I've always got a soft place to land?
That was a huge part of it. And the other part would probably be that independence that you spoke about. I think every person gets to a point where they're unemployable because they just, they either know better than the bosses, they've gone through the whole process that a business would go through, or they just feel like they want their own freedom back, that they want control over their own life. They don't have to beg for time off.
Yep. I'm with you there. So you went from running your family business, and I want to say you were running it. I mean, it was being run by your parents, but you were doing all the operational stuff, right? Like
I was around, yeah.
You were around. You were keeping the heartbeat going, I guess you could say. And then you went into university and you studied there. What did you study?
I studied logistics and information systems.
Did that come naturally to you?
The logistics part did. The information systems didn't too much. But I could see the value in both, and I did enjoy it.
Of course, logistics is important with your current business. What do you think? And the reason why I'm asking is because every person I talk to, their brain is extraordinary. And I talk about a lot of brain stuff in my keynotes, you see. So I'm fascinated by how people's brains are wired. How does your brain understand logistics? Like, I know it's a really weird question, but what is logistics for you? Like, for me, logistics is being able to like put my shoes and socks on, to be fair. And I managed to do that today. So today is a good day. But when you're juggling teams, logistics is a big question. And you've done some massive projects. You've worked with some big organisations, which we'll get into in a minute. What does logistics mean for you?
If I were to describe it in a metaphor, it'd be moving cogs. So putting the right pieces together so that when you move one, the rest of them would move as well.
Wow.
That's how my brain sort of thinks of every component on every project I have. So how do you get everything spinning, I guess, in the workings of a clock?
And so that's why I find this is interesting to me, because my brain doesn't work like that. I can't make my brain work like that. And that's why I think these conversations are so important, because I think we see the world from our own perspective and from the way that we function and operate. And to hear that that's how your brain works, I find that entirely fascinating. Because look, I was before I started working and doing some digital stuff, before Pete, who's my producer as well, before he taught me how to do stuff on a website, I was absolutely technologically inept, and I worked for a bank previously, so I only knew enough to know how to look at bank accounts and help people with their bank accounts, but I can't even use a spreadsheet, and I'm not joking. I cry. How has it been an influence, do you think, from your family that your brain works that way?
Absolutely. I want to say probably, maybe, but my job when I was a kid, it would be primarily problem solving. If something came down the chain to me, it was usually this is an activity that none of us had time for, this is activity none of us have the capability for, this is a big problem. And it was just working with the resources you had at that moment. I distinctly remember my mom saying, we need to get a key release, because she's in real estate, from a lawyer. And I rang them up at 9 in the morning and said, when can we expect it? And they said, we'll let you know. And I said, if I don't get in an hour, I'll give you another ring. And they said, no, we'll come back to you. And I said, this is the only job I have to do today. We got it in 30 minutes.
Wow.
As soon as you're like, well, this is all I have to do today. This 10-year-old on the phone. Yeah, it's my job to make sure this happens.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just resources, right?
Wow. And right bums on the right seats of the bus, effectively. So you went and studied logistics, and then you ended up working in some incredible organisations. Tell me about that.
I ended up working in emergency response. So I did a master's in Israel in emergency response management, in a public health degree. And I just did it because I was a bit sick of business. I wasn't a business degree, and I wasn't ready to go into the world of business yet. And, my life seemed like a disaster at the time, so it seemed suitable.
Wow.
I think every 20-something-year-old feels that at some
Absolutely.
point. Yeah. So I just rocked up to Israel and did a year-long program with some of the key names in the field. Kobe Peleg was one of them from the top of my head. And Israel's considered the best in the world in emergency response.
Wow.
And so all of my trainers were actually active members of the Defence Force and active members of the ambulance service there. And the people I met at the course were just phenomenal. And they've all gone off to do be doctors. To my friend Gavi, he goes off all across the world and teaches other paramedics and emergency responders the procedures that Israel has as more of a bonding kind of element. And everyone's got amazing stories. For me, I ended up working in the port of Tel Aviv, and I ended up working with a couple of emergency response charities and primarily doing logistics. Mm-hmm. I realized very early on that I didn't have it in me to dig people out of rubble and create human straitjackets as they run along. But the logistics side I could do. And I enjoyed the chaos of it. I enjoyed the fact that rules did exist, but with everything, there's a loophole or a negotiation in order to get the end result. And that was the focus, end result. And I appreciate that. Don't do anything illegal or anything. That's not what I mean. Just, that if someone says you can't do something, surely there's a way you can if you need it done.
Wow. I can't even imagine living in that area at that time.
I was a time of peace. I was very lucky when I was living there. But the Middle East is full of chaos and end results. The culture itself teaches you anywhere in the Middle East. It's actually pretty fun.
Just mind-blowing. So different from the upbringing I've had.
Oh, yeah. When I came back to New Zealand, it was chalk and cheese. It was the most opposite. And I spent a good 3 months just coming back down to earth, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, the people in Israel or anywhere in the Middle East, because I spent a few months in other places, they'd argue to communicate. So you'd have loud arguments with the bartender over the weather, and that's just a common conversation. No one was angry at anyone. And they'd say, hey, I didn't like the food, or can you take it back and add this and this? And it was just common. It wasn't insulting. It wasn't aggressive. It was just a conversation.
Yeah.
I tried to take back soup from a food court when I came back, and everyone thought I was having a go, and everyone thought I was, arguing. It just took me a good long while to come back to this more polite, less direct culture here.
Yes.
Yeah, it took me a minute.
Yeah, I bet. Wow, that's just incredible. So very, very different. Do you think that experience, though, shaped who you've become?
Absolutely. Anyone who's spoken to me for long enough can just say she's a very straightforward person, and she's very much a straight shooter. And I think that's everyone in the Middle East. There's no time to dance around it. You could just go after what you want.
So interesting. So one of the things that we've talked about is, and you're talking about chaos, and I think of my brain, which is often in chaos. And one of the things you and I have had is open discussions about neurodiversity. And I'm straight up in saying that I think I'm a self-diagnosed. I live with ADHD, and there are many other people who would say, "Oh, Monique, she's definitely living with ADHD." And look, I embrace it. I've done so much research. I've hyperfixated on it. I have learnt so much about myself by accepting that this could be who I am. And for anybody out there watching, if you're thinking that you may be too and you want a diagnosis, you do you. You do what you need to do. Research, if this conversation is pinging for you, then you probably already have watched everything you can on TikTok, to be fair. But yeah, go and get help, support. If you need medication, you do you. That's all I'm going to say.
And I caution you about the tests, especially for the ADHD one. It feels a little like an attack, but then because most of it's yes, that you have ADHD.
Oh, there you go. I've done a million tests. I've paid for tests online. I've done everything. And yeah, and I just am now at that stage where every time I do something, I just laugh and go, yeah, that's me. And I've learned to manage myself. But we have had that conversation, and I did ask you before we came in today, are you open to talk about neurodivergence?
Yeah.
And what is for somebody who, very similar to me, who has a divergent brain, so we think in mind maps, so that's your problem-solving ability. What is it like running a business? And the reason why I'm saying this, and I'll give you time to have a think about it, is that I watch a lot of videos about the fact that a lot of businesses run by neurodivergent people fail because, like even when it comes to paying bills as an example, they are more likely to pay money to something that gives them a dopamine hit than paying tax, as an example. What is your experience of possibly, we don't know, maybe being neurodivergent and running a business?
Well, first I'll say ADHD is a very new development for me. My husband actually diagnosed me after we started living together at the beginning. And I think he knew it was going to be a triggering event because he handed the phone to me with symptoms of ADHD and then ran away for a run while I sat there reading it.
Oh, no way.
So he knew it was going to be a life-changing moment for me, and he wasn't wrong. It explained quite a lot because growing up, I had the word lazy flung at me a few times.
Me too.
And I befriended people who weren't neurodivergent, and at the time it was because I valued and respected that they weren't, and I couldn't understand my own strengths because it's not really being neurodivergent in school academia is incredibly difficult.
Agreed.
They don't know what to do with you because if you get bored, you won't even tell anyone, and especially with young women. They just get quiet in the back corner and they start daydreaming to themselves. They don't cause fuss. They don't want to. They just aren't interested anymore.
Or I just would talk to myself or talk to the person next to me because I had so many ideas and I had a million words in my body.
I started bringing a laptop to school and working.
What was it? Working on the family business? Oh, you are hilarious.
I was just so bored. I could still completely listen and engage because my neurodivergencies, if I was to describe it as a metaphor, is like having two hamsters that think at the same time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Instead of one at a time. And so both my hamsters were working quite comfortably. Me working, me listening to whatever was happening in school. It made math very hard, though. It made math school very hard because that's actually practice as well as doing. Yeah. But the arts, they became a lot easier because the arts is perception and just listening to the arguments that the books are having and enjoying reading, which I do. I think the reason that a lot of neurodivergent owners or business owners tend to fail in their businesses is because there's a common misconception that you have to go at it alone. And if you have to go at it alone and it's not a skill set that you're naturally predisposed to having, you're not going to be able to do it. If your natural gift with ADHD usually is networking or socializing or doing all those things, you need someone in the business who can help deliver. That's a big part of why I ran an administration company.
I know.
I kind of overcorrected and made sure I was surrounded by people who could do that delivery.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I was just sitting here thinking, you're absolutely right. I got into business because I felt I was unemployable. And I mean, when you're an actor, you are a lone wolf, to be fair, and that's my training. And then knowing that I have to do tax and all these other things is completely overwhelming, especially when I'm not great with numbers and I'm all that sort of stuff. And you're absolutely right. Going it alone is something that I think many of us go through because I think, especially if you are undiagnosed, but you think you're just a little kooky or a little weird, and you think nobody's going to understand me. And so the only person you can rely on is yourself. And we all know that, at the end of the day, if your sink is leaking and your pipes, it's leaking everywhere, you call in a plumber, right? So why don't people do that in their business? With
bookkeeping if they're not naturally predisposed to that follow through? Yeah. And I think we're living in the age of tech advancements. And so those that can handle doing one thing at a time, or those that are very introverted, which is also not usually the the ADHD at least, they can manage to automate things so that their life is a little easier and they can stay without getting that additional support a bit longer. And so the ADHDers and the neurodivergent, and they look at these guys who manage to streamline everything and still work on their own and feel like why they can't do it. And every journey is different. And if you're doing one less networking a month, but you have a bookkeeper for the equivalent price, guarantee your business would grow faster because you'd still find a way to talk to people. You'd still make sure to connect. It's just working around your own like some of the most successful business owners or businesses in the world Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, all of them, their first thing was getting help. Their first step was finding the right people, putting them in the company and growing. I didn't start this smart. I had some interesting staff along the way that did not do much to help grow the business. But that's normal. You wait until you find the right team, and then you get a team of all-star team, and you get the help you need and you keep growing the business. You keep moving forward.
And you know that because you've been a cog in a machine for your family business.
Mm-hmm.
So you understand that. And I find it so interesting as well, talking to people who are newly diagnosed as adults, being on the autism spectrum, as opposed to people who are newly diagnosed or self-diagnosed as being ADHD or living with ADHD, I should say. And what I'm finding is that the people who, and again, this is a bold generalization, but the people that I know who are perhaps living on the autism spectrum, they don't necessarily want to socialize. So that's part of their challenge. So for them, having somebody within their organisation that can go and do the socialising or be the front-facing person for them would be a safe way to help their business grow, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to someone like you or I who I secretly quite love going to networking events, and I'm not great with small talk, to be fair, which I know is a neurodivergent thing, but I do love hearing people's stories. And I find myself, when I go to these events, I'm like, don't tell me surface stuff. Tell me the reason. What's the real reason? Why do you do what you do? Like, I love that stuff. And the more I talk to people living with ADHD, the more I hear the same stories coming through. Has that been a similar experience for you? Do you know?
It absolutely has.
Yep.
It's a big part of why I structured the business the way I have. The reason we offer administrative EA work, as well as creative, as well as bookkeeping, is because I don't want to limit who comes to us. If you're a business owner that needs help, but you're naturally predisposed to enjoying the bookkeeping, we'll help you with the marketing. If you're naturally predisposed to love being out there, taking selfies, being on the social channels, but reconciling some things like pulling teeth without anesthesia.
Yep, I resonate with that. Yeah.
Then we have the right team to help you. And if you need to put in systems in place that a tech-savvy person or someone who's introverted enough to want to research and figure out on their own, and you need these systems put in place, we have someone as an EA or an operating procedure one-off project, and we'll get it set up for you. But high-level businesses all have COOs and all have administrative operations teams. There's nothing stopping business owners from having the same. It's a good opportunity cost to keep in the business, because the value you earn from the amount of time you save is more billable hours, it's more time, it's less burnout, because burnout can actively destroy about 2 years of business success. If the burnout is bad enough, it can be 2 to 3 years before you bounce back as a business owner.
So why do you do what you do?
I like the immediate support that you can give someone. I like the fact that almost all my clients ring and they're like, I actually don't know what I'd do without the help that you guys give. I can breathe again.
Wow.
You're on my side. And that's a big reason of why I do what I do. I want to be on the business owner's side.
And it gives you a good dopamine hit.
That helps. That does help. But that I didn't know going in.
I bet you were attracted to something that you thought could work as a business, and suddenly there's all these other benefits that you now know are probably related to the neurodivergence side of your amazing brain. So one of the things that I love about this podcast is not only do I get to understand somebody on a little bit more of a deeper level and find out their drivers and understand their brain, which I'm just super obsessed with. I hyperfixate on brains all the time, to be fair. What do you think would be that big life lesson you wish you'd known, or that you would love to share, or that you wish you had have told 16-year-old self, or that if you were doing a TED Talk would be that one big message that you want people to take away?
I think it'd be patience. It's something my husband has taught me more than everyone else, and it's because he's not neurodivergent. He's just a saint, really. It's okay to take a minute to learn a new skill. It's okay to take a minute to take in the flowers or the beach. It's okay to enjoy the little moments because they're the ones that keep the hard moments from being too hard. And that's probably something I've learned as a business owner in the last 3 or 4 years, and with my husband's complete work-life balance. Yeah, and just not to sweat the small stuff because things ebbs and flows, and you just got to keep going. Don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, that's a mic drop. That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for that. And like that, I know you were coming into this. You were like, everybody comes into these podcasts not knowing what to expect. I don't know what to expect when I come into these podcast chats. Like I told you beforehand, they're real. If I hear something, I want to know more because some people would say I'm nosy. I'd say I'm deeply curious about people in their lives. And I know you were, as most people are, a little bit nervous coming into this, but, I don't think it was too scary. And we ended up at the place that I wanted to go, where you gave us such beautiful wisdom. And that is what I love about these chats. Every single time I have somebody on here, I learn something new. So thank you for your wisdom.
Thank you for inviting me.
Just amazing. Now, if you want to find out more about Elina and the great work that she does and her team does through ProjectSeven, Elina, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
I'd suggest going onto our website, project7.co.nz, having a read of the things we offer, and just filling in the form. It'll direct itself directly to me, and I'll reach out and we can grab a coffee
Or do a Zoom call with a coffee.
Do a Zoom call, whatever the case. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much. So there you have it. That's all the details. You can check out the links as well around or somewhere around this video or this audio track on whatever platform you are listening. But once again, I want to say thank you. If this is your first time joining us, kia ora. I hope you enjoyed today's chat. I know I learned a lot. And if you are a frequent flyer like some of you are, I know you are. I've seen the viewing stats. Thank you so much for continuing to support these authentic chats around who we are, why we do the things we do, and uncovering under the masks, under the Instagram filters, who we really are, which is people having a human experience ready to share their wisdom with the world. I want to say a big thank you to Pete Ward, who is over here behind the scenes as my producer. He does an amazing job. Thank you, Pete. You are a legend. Thank you. And I want to thank you for joining me because these are super special. I love sharing time and space with you. And I've been told I have to tell everybody to like, share, subscribe, whatever, follow, whatever platform you're on. But yeah, if this has resonated with you today, I would love you to share because I know I've certainly learnt a huge amount, and I hope you have too. Elina, thank you so much. Once again, you're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And I am Monique Bradley. This is Uncovering Authenticity, a podcast where we don't really know what we're doing. We don't really know what we're going, but we're here to do it as magnificently as possible. I'm Monique Bradley. We'll see you next time. Ka kihite anō. E nohora. Stay magnificent. Bye.